Okay, welcome. Let's keep looking at Psalm 119. We're up to He and Vav, which are the next two stanzas. Here's the first one. Teach me, O Lord, the way of your statutes, and I shall observe it to the end. Give me understanding that I may observe your law and keep it with all my heart. Make me walk in the path of your commandments, for I delight in it. Incline my heart to your testimonies and not to dishonest gain. Turn away my eyes from looking at vanity and revive me in your ways. Establish your word to your servant as that which produces reverence for you. Turn away my reproach, which I dread, for your ordinances are good. Behold, I long for your precepts. Revive me through your righteousness. Okay, a couple comments. When this says establish your word to your servant, an alternative translation could be your promise. Establish your promise to your servant. When this says as that which produces reverence for you, an alternative translation could be establish your word to your servant as that which is for the fear of you. So it has to do with the fear of the Lord here. Okay, the key thought, I think, the easiest way to think about this is that this is about turn my heart to your word. Make me be somebody who understands and is filled with the love of what your will is. So let's look at this not in terms of 4 verses and 4, but in terms of 3 and then 3 and then 2. So here we go. Teach me, O Lord, the way of your statutes, and I shall observe it to the end. Give me understanding that I may observe your law and keep it with all my heart. Make me walk in the path of your commandments, for I delight in it. Notice, first of all, the way. Teach me. Doesn't say, teach me, O Lord, your statutes. It says, teach me the way of your statutes. It doesn't say, make me walk in your commandments. It says, make me walk in the path of your commandments. So the picture here is that it's being transformed until we think about everything more like God would. It's not just having, a checklist of rules that I'm following. Because if I did that, it would be kind of incomplete. I would be sort of doing my own thing and then trying to add in God's extra borders and boundaries on it. What this is saying is I want to understand not just your statutes, but the way of your statutes. I want to understand not just what you say, but the way of living that involves that. I want my whole life to be saturated with the way your word speaks. I want to think about everything the way you want me to think about it. I don't just want to walk in your commandments sort of commandment by commandment. I want to walk in that path. I want to live in that way. I want to live in that manner. It's saying your commandments paint a picture of a way of living life. I want to understand that way of living life because I want to observe your law, not just detail by detail, but wholeheartedly and consistently and from my very heart. I want to be the kind of person that I think about everything the way that you think about it. I handle everything, evaluate everything, desire everything the way that you think about it, the way that you desire it, the way that is in accord with what you have shown us. So the goal is not just to know the word, but to do it consistently and from the heart, to be completely saturated in the will of God. Okay. Then he says, incline my heart to your testimonies and not to dishonest gain. Turn away my eyes from looking at vanity and revive me in your ways. So it's one thing to say, help me understand and love your word, your ways, your will, your commandments. But now he looks and says, there's other things in my life that distract me from that are enemies of that kind of understanding, that keep me from focusing on your word. There's dishonest gain and there's vanity. There's things that are useless but feel like they're very, very important. We go through life and life keeps deceiving us about what's right and what's important and what matters. It keeps telling us that all kinds of things that matter that don't. All kinds of things matter that are opposed to God's revelation of his truth. So we need to be delivered from the things that deceive us. There's so much that distracts us from what God loves. There's a verse in Philippians 1 that says, may your love grow still more and more in all discernment so that you may approve the things that are excellent. We want to understand and approve the things that are excellent and not be distracted by all the things that feel so very necessary for us, but are not actually very necessary. And then he says, establish your word to your servant as that which produces reverence for you. Turn my eyes away from vanity, turn me away from deceitful and dishonest gain, and instead establish your word to your servant as the one that I should care about. Turn away my reproach, which I dread, for your ordinances are good. Behold, I long for your precepts. Revive me through your righteousness. First of all, this is talking about, this reverence for you is bringing up the idea of the fear of the Lord. If you look through the fear of the scriptures, especially in Psalms and Proverbs about the fear of the Lord, one of the main ideas is that it's taking what God says seriously. kind of reminds me when I had very young children, we would sometimes tell them something that we wanted them to do or not do. And sometimes they would just sort of laugh it off. And you could see that they weren't planning on obeying. You could see that they weren't planning on paying any attention to it at all. And you so much wanted to take them and say, listen, I want you to hear what I'm saying. I really mean this. It's really not a good idea for you to go against it. They were taking it flippantly. And sometimes we're like this with God. He's saying, do this, don't do that. And we're treating it like, oh, yeah, okay. And we clearly don't mean it. And this person is saying, I don't want to be like that. I want to take you completely seriously. I want to fear you in the sense of taking seriously whatever you say, seeing that that's the most important thing. In one way, to have the fear of the Lord is to be free from fearing anything else, because God is all that matters. And all we care about is about pleasing him. And I think this is talking about fearing God's reproach more than man's. It's like, I don't want to care what anybody else tells me. I don't want to care what anybody else is making fun of me for, or mocking me for, or threatening me with. I want the only thing that matters to me to be, am I walking in a way that pleases you? And am I walking in a way that you've instructed me? Am I walking in the way of your commandments? That's how I want to think about it. I think that the reproach here is talking about the reproach of forsaking God's will. I think when he says, turn away my reproach, he's saying, don't let me fall into displeasing you out of my desire to not displease men. Let me be willing to displease anybody else, but I want to never displease you. I want to never walk against your counsel or your commandments. I want to always do what you tell me to do. Now, I could be wrong. This could be talking about the reproach of other people, and he could be saying, deliver me from the reproach of other people as I follow you. But either way, the basic principle is the same. We want to have a fear of God, not a fear of people. We want to see that God is the one most deserving to be taken seriously out of anything else and anyone else, out of anyone and anything in life. And notice also with these same verses, God's role. It's a longing for obedience here, but it's not one which leads to our promising to obey. It's one which leads to praying for help. This is putting the final responsibility squarely on God's shoulders. It's saying, God, would you establish your word for me? Would you establish your word for me as that which leads to the fear of you? And would you establish me in fearing you? And revive me through your righteousness. So this, again, is not about self-righteousness. It's not about, God, look, I'm promising to obey you. You just bless me because I'm obeying. It's, God, I need you to help me be obedient. I need you to help me to be faithful. I need you to help me be consistent. So again, the general principle here is, God, I need you to turn my heart to your word. I need you to establish your word in my life as that which is important. I need you to help me see the way of your commandments. So let's read the whole thing with that idea in mind. Teach me, O Lord, the way of your statutes, and I shall observe it to the end. If you'll teach me to live that way, then I'll be able to do it. Give me understanding, a real understanding, really getting it, that I may observe your law and keep it with all my heart. Make me walk in the path of your commandments, for I delight in it. I want to do this, but I need you to help me. Incline my heart to your testimonies and not to dishonest gain. Turn away my eyes from looking at vanity and revive me in your ways. So much here is looking to God to be the one who changes our hearts, to God to be the one who draws us to him. Establish your word to your servant as that which produces reverence for you, or that which is for the fear of you. Turn away my reproach, which I dread, for your ordinances are good. Behold, I long for your precepts. Revive me through your righteousness. All right, the next one is Vav. It says this, may your loving kindness also come to me, O Lord, your salvation according to your word. So I will have an answer for him who reproaches me, for I trust in your word. And do not take the word of truth utterly out of my mouth, for I wait for your ordinances. So I will keep your law continually forever and ever. And I will walk at liberty, for I seek your precepts. I will also speak of your testimonies before kings and shall not be ashamed. I shall delight in your commandments, which I love. And I shall lift up my hands to your commandments, which I love. And I will meditate on your statutes. Okay, a couple of comments. Your salvation according to your word. Again, this could alternatively be translated as promise. Your salvation according to your promise. The word is not only commandment here, it's also promise. When it says, for I wait for your ordinances, that could also be translated as I hope in your ordinances. So it's a waiting with hope, with expectation. When it says I walk at liberty, That's, I think, more literally, I walk in a wide place. The idea is to be at liberty with lots of room for movement rather than being constrained and penned in and unable to go anywhere. It's really interesting here. If we're thinking in the flesh, we think of the law of God and the word of God and the counsel of God and the will of God as being something that pens us in so that we can't do anything we want to. But on the contrary, he's saying, free up my life so that I can be free to follow you. And that'll be being in a wide place. That'll give me all sorts of good options instead of being penned in by temptation and by sin and by adversity and by whatever else. Later on, again, as we've seen before, when it says, I shall delight in your commandments, that could also be translated as I will delight myself in your commandments. So it's focusing on my own subjective delight in it. One more thing I want to point out. You'll notice that verse right there has only one line. And in the Hebrew, it's only got one line beginning with Vav. So this is a minor exception to the thing that I've said all the way along. I didn't realize this was here till this week when I was looking at it. It was in my notes. I must have noticed it before, but I'd forgotten it. This is one place where it's still true that every one of the 8 verses started with Vav, but this particular verse only has one line in it. It's left in 2 lines by New American Standard. I shall delight in your commandments, which I love. But the which I love is not starting with Vav. So this is not a mistake or anything. It's just deliberate poetic variation. Sort of gives it more of a rhythm. And I think it makes a difference to how the last 2 come together. And rather than being 2 different thoughts, it's like a cascading thought. I shall delight in your commandments, which I love, and I shall lift up my hands to your commandments, which I love, and I will meditate on your statutes. So it sort of is, it's ascending in intensity as it gets there. Anyway, I think the key thought here is interesting. I think he's saying, give me a story to tell of your faithfulness. Give me a testimony. Sometimes when we start the Christian life, we know what we believe God can do. We know he's trustworthy. And then we go through life and we run into some hard times and we run into some good times. And especially the hard times, sometimes after we get through them, we can look back and say, I know for sure that God is enough. I know for sure that God is faithful because I was facing things which seemed really difficult to me and he brought me out of them or brought me through them. For me, one of the hardest times in my life was back in 95. I went through a pretty severe depression. And I now can look back and say, I learned so much about the faithfulness and the patience of God during that time of depression. And even though it didn't go away immediately, it took a long time to struggle through, and I still sometimes struggle with the same kind of thing, I am so much more sure now than I used to be of how faithful God is to answer that. And I've got a story in my own life about how that works. And so each one of us, God is building a story in our lives about how his faithfulness, how his goodness works out. But it's different for every one of us. We all face different struggles. But the more you talk to people who've been around for several decades, who have been following the Lord for several decades, you'll discover that there's a story about a time that they went through something very difficult, but God came through for them. And they can not only say, I know that God is good because I believe it because the scripture says it, they can say, I've also seen it in my own life. And this is kind of I think this particular stanza is kind of saying, give me that kind of testimony, God. Give me that kind of story. Give me something that I can say to people, look, God came through. Here's how. So let's take a look at it. May your loving kindnesses also come to me, O Lord, your salvation according to your word. So I will have an answer for him who reproaches me, for I trust in your word. And do not take the word of truth utterly out of my mouth, for I wait for your ordinances. So I will keep your law forever and ever. All right, so the first 2 things I think are saying, fulfill your promises to rescue me as one who keeps your word. May your loving kindnesses also come to me, your salvation according to what you promised, according to your word. So I'll have an answer for him who reproaches me, for I trust in your word. I'm standing here saying to people, I'm putting everything in God. I'm putting all my eggs in one basket. It's all based on God fulfilling what he said. And they're saying to me, you can't trust that. You can't go with that. You better do something else. God, would your loving kindness come to me? Would you bless me or reward me or rescue me or whatever you need to do so that I can give them an answer? So I can say, no, God came through. It was enough. Don't take the word of truth utterly out of my mouth, for I wait for your ordinances. Again, wait here means hope in. I think what he means is when he says, don't take the word of truth utterly out of my mouth. I think he means I'm standing here, I'm claiming your word's truth. I'm hoping in your promises. I'm telling everybody that I'm trusting in you. Don't let me down. Don't have it fail because I want to be able to stay with this. I want to be able to keep walking with you. I want to be able to keep living in relationship with you and following your word. Now, this isn't a bargain. He's not saying, look, I'm only going to follow you if you do it the way I expect. He knows that it might not come out the way he expects. But what he's saying is, for me to be able to keep living with you and keep trusting you, I will need you to help. I will need you to deliver me. I will need you to rescue me. I'll need you to keep me alive. And I may need you to keep me faithful. I may not be able to hang on if you don't give me the help. So however you do it, whether it's delivering me from my trials or giving me grace to go through my trials or whatever you're choosing to do, I'm depending completely on your word to be fulfilled. So please, God, fulfill it. Please, God, don't let me completely be swamped. Don't let me completely be overtaken by all my struggles and all my trials and just disappear from history. Be here, be with me, stand with me, and use me to tell the story of your goodness. So I will keep your law continually forever and ever if you do that. The next phrase, I'm just going to look at the next two verses. I will walk at liberty, for I seek your precepts. Let me first of all point out that comes from the previous two verses we had on the screen a screen ago. He just said, do not take the word of truth utterly out of my mouth, so I will keep your law continually, and I will walk at liberty. If you will fulfill your promises and deliver me and hold on to me and take care of me and keep me going, then I will be able to keep your law from now on. I'll be able to keep on keeping your law, and I'll be able to walk freely in liberty. So deliver me so that I can walk freely. Because you've helped me. So when he says, I will walk at liberty, that's conditional on what he's just said before. If you'll help me, I'll be able to walk at liberty. If you'll be faithful to what you promised, I'll be able to walk at liberty. And then I will speak of your testimonies before kings. And this is really interesting because he just said, don't take the word of truth utterly out of my mouth. And now he says, if you keep your promise and uphold me and keep faithful to me and deliver me, your timing is fine. Then you not only will not have taken the word of truth utterly out of my mouth, I will take that word and I'll speak it. I'll take it everywhere. I'll tell everybody that I trusted you. I'll tell everybody that your faith promise works and your law is good and your word is trustworthy. I'll tell everybody we can rely on it. After you've rescued me, in other words, he's saying, I will have stories to tell and I'll tell them before kings. I won't be ashamed. I'll be able to say, this is what happened. And I'll delight in your commandments, which I love, and lift up my hands to your commandments, which I love, and I'll meditate on your statutes. I'll be all the more grateful for your covenant and your word. So that's kind of the idea here. Give me a story to tell of your faithfulness. May your loving kindness also come to me, O Lord, your salvation according to what you promised, according to your word. So I'll have an answer for him who reproaches me, for I trust in your word. Don't take the word of truth utterly out of my mouth, for I wait for your ordinances. Then, if you do that, so I will keep your law continually forever and ever, and I'll walk at liberty, for I seek your precepts. At that point, I will continue to speak your word. I'll speak of your testimonies before kings, and shall not be ashamed. I'll delight in your commandments, which I love, and I shall lift up my hands to your commandments, which I love, and I will meditate on your statutes. Okay, see you next week. Thanks for coming.